Hello, everybody. Fellowship finally released their patch notes for Season 2, which is coming up tomorrow. So, figured I would do a quick rundown of all of the changes and my thoughts. So, let us get started. First, we're going to be looking at his core mechanics and abilities. All of Ardeos' ability damage has been reduced by approximately 5%. Now, that's obviously unfortunate. It's a pretty big aura nerf, but this doesn't really affect his gameplay at all, and we don't really know the exact tuning yet, so it's kind of irrelevant for like the purposes of this discussion. It's just something to kind of keep track of. Is that a general theme with these like core mechanics is that they are nerfing him a decent amount. Next, we have Detonate. So Detonate Change is interesting because it says that Detonate now deals 2.5 seconds worth of damage, and it used to be 2, but it currently does 2.5 seconds worth of damage on live servers, pre-patch. So I'm not sure if this was intended to be a nerf. As I'm reading this, the wording is incorrect. So we're already at 2.5. Maybe they meant to say it's going down to 2, and it used to be at 2.5, in which case that's a pretty big nerf. Detonate is 30 to 40% of Ardeos' overall. And that's going to change with all these new talents and stuff, but just as a baseline from Season 1, that ends up being like a 6 to 8% overall damage nerf, so that's a huge damage nerf if this actually is a reduction down to 2 seconds, but that's not really clear here, so we'll just have to kind of figure it out when the patch goes live tomorrow. We have a couple fireball changes here. Fireball's direct damage was increased by 105%, but it now only applies 20% instead of 70% of the direct damage as damage over time. So this is actually a really big fireball buff. So I believe this is like a 45% increase to fireball's damage overall, including like the initial hit and the damage over time. The only downside here is that because the dot is significantly weaker, that is going to nerf Detonate, which, whether or not Detonate already got nerfed, we're not really sure. But this is going to be a small nerf to Detonate. But overall, the damage is going up on Fireball significantly. We also have another nerf, unfortunately. Fireball, damage over time, now has a 50% chance to generate 2 cinders, was 100%. Now, I believe Fireball baseline ticks once every 2 seconds. So before, every time it ticked, it gives you 2 cinders. That's 1 cinder per second per enemy. Now it's going to be half a cinder per second per enemy. Now, over the course of, an entire pull, or a large pull, a single Fireball could end up giving you like an entire Detonate cast, perhaps. If you're getting 1 cinder per second, and Fireball lasts 12 seconds or however long it lasts, it doesn't take many enemies. Like an 8 enemy pack, you're getting an entire Detonate out of Fireball, the entire Fireball duration. And with more haste, you're actually getting even more. So reducing it by 50% is really unfortunate. I think this is going to be a pretty big hit. Yeah, it's kind of hard to quantify. Like I don't have it like quantified or anything, but I have a feeling you're not really going to be able to spam Detonate as much anymore, especially without the Wildfire Legendary giving you 30% extra Spirit. So we'll have to see how it feels. I think this one is going to be one of the ones that like kind of feels bad as a change. Like the 5% aura nerf doesn't really feel any different, but this one could end up kind of hurting Ardeos' flow and like Detonate spam. Detonate's already getting nerfed, at least a little bit, so it's a little unfortunate. Incinerate direct damage while channeling reduced by 43%. This was kind of expected. Incinerate was a huge damage amount after they buffed it in Season 1. So this isn't really that unexpected. I think it's about like a 3% overall nerf is kind of my take on it. Again, it sucks, but I don't really care about Incinerate. Like, Incinerate's a button that you press sometimes to get a haste buff. And now it's not going to blow up packs quite as quickly. In my opinion, I would prefer if Ardeos' base abilities are better, which, spoiler alert, I think that they are. So This is a nerf, but it's not one that I'm like particularly mad at. The most interesting change here is the last one. Multiple engulfing flames can now be applied to targets as their own parallel debuffs, each with their own durations and dealing their damage individually to the target. So if you're familiar with Affliction Warlock from World of Warcraft, which Ardeos is fairly similar to, this is how Unstable Affliction works currently in the Midnight pre-patch, and it's how it used to work back in BFA, I believe, before they moved to Malefic Rapture. So basically, you can stack Engulfing Flames multiple times, and it'll do a ton of damage to the target if you have a bunch on them. This is really fun, I think. This is one of my favorite changes. I think stacking the dots is a really cool mechanic, and it makes Engulfing Flames just that much more smooth to use. Because before, you were kind of more concerned with, like, pandemic windows, and like if you're using Pyromania to spread it, you have to like target a different enemy so that you would get 4 Engulfing Flames out and not waste one. Now, you just send Engulfing Flames on your main target, you can Pyromania them too. Now they have 2 Engulfing Flames on them, and they're just taking huge damage. So this is a really nice change. I really like this. And with some of the talents that we're going to get to, they are kind of pushing like an Engulfing Flames build. So that might end up being good. We'll have to see. But either way, I'm a huge fan of this change. I think it'll just make Ardeos' gameplay so much nicer. And Engulfing Flames is such like a huge amount of damage in one dot that I think you'll really feel it when you get to apply multiple to the same target. It's gonna be really good for single target and funnel. Going on to talents and legendaries. Flickering Cinders has been removed. That was the one that increased the Cinder generation from Searing Blaze. It kind of sucked. Nobody really used it, so nothing of value was lost here. Ouroboros, also removed. That was the one that reduced Pyromania's cooldown when Searing Blaze ticked, I believe. Again, nobody really took it, so nothing of value lost. Moving on to the actual talent changes. Flare Up now deals 50% of Infernal Waves damage to all enemies with Searing Blaze. This used to be 25%. So Flare Up's damage is doubling with this patch, which is pretty huge. Flare Up was already being taken. I think it ended up being dropped from like the top builds. Because eventually you got to the point where you're just spamming Detonate so much you weren't even really Infernal Waving in packs. But with this doubling in effectiveness and with Cinder Generation getting nerfed from Fireball, this could definitely see play. I could still see it getting dropped in like really high push content, but I think from like early to mid to even like kind of like pushing into Eternal, this could definitely be a strong 1-point talent to pick up for AoE. Frog Squad. Frog Squad, classic. When we were all running Frog build in Season 1. In addition to its previous effects, now also increases the damage of all Fire Frogs by 10%. So Fire Frogs were about 16 to 17% of damage before in the build, I believe. So we're just getting maybe up to like a 2% damage buff with this. In a vacuum, you know, there are other frog changes with the Legendary we're going to get to that will kind of make this even better. But this is a nice change. It just... I'm assuming this was done to kind of keep the Frog build in line with the Fireball build and the Engulfing Flames build. I still think that the Frog build is going to be the best one, spoiler alert, but I appreciate that they're kind of adding some damage to Fire Frogs here, because Fire Frogs are very fun, and I love them. New talent, Backdraft. I'm assuming that this is a 1-point talent, because it's replacing Flickering Cinders. Causes your Detonate cast to extend the duration of all your activate Searing Blaze effects by 1.5 seconds up to their maximum duration. I think this will be nice. This will be nice when you're kind of gearing up Ardeos, like before Eternal League. I think once you hit Eternal and you start getting a lot of haste, then your slow burn is going to be kind of doing this for you anyway. So I think with slow burn still being a thing, this will end up not really being used. But as a 1-point talent for like gearing up in the initial phases of the season, I think this will be really nice. Because Ardeos really struggles in the early game. And so I feel like having like the Fireball buffs from before, this being able to extend Searing Blaze, I think that those are going to be really nice changes to help smooth out his leveling curve. I think eventually you're going to drop this, but I could see in like super high keys, like super high push Eternals, you might pick this back up because then maybe by then mobs will outlive your Searing Blaze plus slow burn combo, and so you can kind of like the way that I read this talent is like your Searing Blaze never runs out basically, and so maybe you just kind of pick it back up when mob packs take 50 seconds to kill and you're pulling a lot of them so that you don't have to redot Searing Blaze. Also, as we'll see in like 2 more talents, Agonizing Blaze got buffed, so that could be a thing too. I could even see this being a replacement for Slow Burn. Now, with the Engulfing Flames changes, Slow Burn, like dropping Slow Burn is going to hurt Engulfing Flames quite a bit, especially at higher haste. But maybe if you, like, depending on how you want to do your talent points, you could save a talent point and just make Searing Blaze permanent with this, not have to worry about Slow Burn, and then, yeah, you sacrifice some Engulfing Flames damage, but now you have an extra talent point you can put somewhere. So, I can see that. I think this talent is going to add a lot of variety and kind of, like, good decision-making to Ardeos' builds. Next, another new talent. I'm assuming this one is also a 1-point talent because, as we'll see, Undying Flames is moving to 2 points to replace Ouroboros. So this is going to slide in as a 1-point talent. Crash and Burn causes your Searing Blaze damage, reduces cooldown of Fireball by 0.1 seconds. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of this. Like, in a Fireball build, you're going to take this. So, like, while you're doing Fireball, while you're gearing up, yeah, you're going to take this to just get more Fireballs out. The main problem with this is that it sucks in single target. But, you know, Fireball build in general kind of sucks in single target. So, I guess if you're running Fireball build, you're just kind of sacking your single target anyway. And this just helps you do more mass AoE. Fireball is also a hasted cooldown, by the way, so this kind of on top of that is going to help get it lower, and it's going to kind of... It's going to make it easier to keep Fireball up in the early game, like before you have a ton of haste, so I think it'll be fun to play around with. But maybe not like the best thing late game. We have a pretty simple Agonizing Blaze buff here. Now increases damage dealt by Searing Blaze by 4% per stack, was 3%, up to a maximum of 40%. At 10 stacks. Yeah, I think this is cool, especially with Backdraft being a thing. Agonizing Blaze was seeing like some experimentation in Season 1. I think it ended up being dropped. Like, I don't think it ended up being strong enough. But, I mean, this is a decent buff. We're increasing its effectiveness by 1/3, basically. So, I could see this maybe getting picked up again for like maybe like low to mid Eternals. Could be like a nice thing to slot in. And even with Backdraft now, like if you're going for a permanent Searing Blaze build, maybe you just pick this up. Maybe you drop Slow Burn and you pick this up and you kind of lose some Engulfing Flame damage, but now you have like really solid AoE. And this is still decent in single target too, so. Undying Flame is now a 2-point talent, so this is one of the biggest talent changes. What this used to do is it used to just increase the duration of your Engulfing Flame by 3 seconds. This was really easy to slot into like any build. Ardeos kind of struggled with single target and funnel and like prio damage in Season 1. So this was nice to kind of like help that, especially with the slow burn talent. You could get Engulfing Flame to last quite a while. And so that was a really nice and easy talent to slot into basically any build. It being 1 point. Now it's a bit harder. 2-point talents are a little bit harder to actually like fit into a build, but it now grants you 2 charges of Engulfing Flame instead of 1. So, and you still get the increased duration. I think it would be really sad to not pick this and then just lose the extra 3 seconds that you would have normally gotten in Season 1. The 2 charges of Engulfing Flame, I think, are good. I'm just not sure how good. if you're using the Chrono Shift weapon, this actually gets better. I just thought of that because then you're getting both charges back, basically, instead of just one. But ideally, you're casting this on cooldown, especially with the overlapping Engulfing Flames now. So 2 charges just kind of makes it slightly more efficient, and it helps when you go into a pack or when you go into a boss, because you can just send 2 charges immediately on whatever you're doing. I think it'll also help with the rolling flames changes that are right after this. So I think Undying Flame is still going to be a good talent. I think it was probably better as the 1-point iteration, but I do think that the 2 charges is a cool thing. So I'm not mad about this, but I am just worried that maybe it going to a 2-point talent is a bit of a detriment. But now we're getting onto the Rolling Flames changes. So Rolling Flames is the 3-point talent, I believe, that reduced the cooldown of Engulfing Flames whenever Searing Blaze dealt damage. This was basically never taken. 3-point talents are really expensive, and Frogs was like Pyrophibian Frenzy was obviously the one that you would go to most of the time, and then sometimes you would go with Rain of Fire for the Fireball build, but really it was Pyrophibian Frenzy once you had the gear to sustain that. The problem that Rolling Flames had before is that it was really inconvenient to use, because it was really only good in AoE because you need more Searing Blazes to get more Engulfing Flames with the talent. But then the problem is, like, then you're tab targeting and everything. So now it's like, oh, now I have to be constantly tab targeting to put Engulfing Flames on new enemies because it doesn't stack. So one of the things in this season is that now Engulfing Flames does stack on the same target. So this is going to be really good for funnel, because in AoE, they didn't nerf the cooldown reduction from Searing Blaze, because they compensated it with an Infernal Wave cooldown reduction. But, if you're getting a lot of cooldown reduction, you can just keep stacking Eternal or Engulfing Flames on the same target over and over again. And so if you're in some, like, certain dungeons where you have, like, prio mobs, you can just kind of nuke them with this. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to make the Engulfing Flames build, like, better than the Frogs build, but I think it will. It's definitely interesting. And they also made it much better in single target, too, with the Infernal Wave, because you kind of spam Infernal Wave a lot in single target. So this is going to increase Ardeos' boss damage by a lot, and it's going to give him a lot of funnel damage in packs. So I'm not sure if it's going to end up being worth the 3 talent points. I think, like, if you're going an Engulfing Flames build, you're going to take this, but I'm not sure how it's going to, like, compare to Frog build. But I am excited for this. Like, I think this will be fun to test out. Next, Rain of Fire just buffed its procs per minute. Obviously, good. Fireball got a pretty big buff itself, so this is good. I'm still not a fan of, like, the procs per minute thing as, like, a general idea, but like, I much prefer something like Pyrophibian Frenzy, where it, like, has a % chance to proc, so it kind of incentivizes you to build, like, crit and haste. So I kind of wish that there was something maybe here that, like, incentivized you to do something, but it's good. You'll probably take it early for Fireball build, but nothing special here. And then just as a note, because they changed Rolling Flames and Rain of Fire, Pyrophibian Frenzy did not get changed at all, so it's still the same. But there are some things, as we're about to get to, that are going to make it better, I think. So this first new legendary, now I'm not sure if they're actually getting rid of the old legendaries. I would assume that they are. So my assumption is that they are getting rid of the old legendaries, and the only one that was any good was the neck that gave you 30% crit and spirit whenever you used Wildfire. Losing that is going to be kind of rough. Like, that was a huge damage buff. So that's going to hurt, like, Detonate spam and stuff, but I think that these new ones are going to make Ardeos' damage profile a lot more even, which I prefer. I understand that burst damage is, like, generally considered better, but I kind of like these new legendaries, at least this Frog one. So yeah, the Exquisite Flaming Toad Cloak causes your Fire Frog's ability to summon a giant fire toad that leaps to your enemies and explodes for 800% of normal Fire Frog damage onto it and nearby enemies. Any Fire Frog you can conjure also has a 15% chance to turn into a fire toad. This is really good, I think. So normally Fire Frog spawns 5 frogs, and each one gets 3 bounces. So you get 15 in total. Obviously, if you're going this legendary, you're going to be taking Frog Squad, which gives you an extra 1 frog and an extra 1 bounce. So in total, we're getting 6 frogs and 4 bounces. So 24 bounces in total. So assuming that what they mean by normal Fire Frog damage is a single bounce, 1 cast of Fire Frogs is 2400% of normal Fire Frog damage. This Fire Toad does 800%, so it's a third of your overall Fire Frog cast damage. So straight up, our Fire Frog's casts are just doing 33% more damage. And that's only in single target. This is an AoE frog, which is really good. Because one of the problems that frogs had in Season 1 is that they were only single target. So, you cast Fire Frogs, it does the same damage whether you're in single target or whether there's 50 enemies, because each bounce is only a single target attack. Fire Frogs did kind of scale up in AoE with Pyrophibian, because the more dots that you have out, the more AoE dots, the more frogs you're spawning, but each individual frog did not scale up in AoE. Now, you are getting AoE frogs, because with this next thing, any Fire Frog that you conjure also has a 15% chance to turn into a Fire Toad. If those Fire Toads are hitting everything in the pack, Ardeos' damage in packs is going to go crazy. Like, if you have, 15 enemies on, some crazy pull, or if you're doing, 40 enemies or something wild in, Sailor's Abyss, you're spawning so many frogs, and there are going to be so many Fire Toads, and they're going to splash on the entire pack. Now, there's probably going to be some diminishing returns. They don't have that, they don't have that specified here, so we'll have to see. But, that seems crazy. And also, because Fire Toads, so each Fire Frog's doing 400% Fire Frog damage with their 4 bounces. Fire Toads do double that. So, just straight up in single target, your casts of Fire Frogs are doing 48% more damage on average, and your Pyrophibian Frenzy's doing 15% more damage. So, pretty good in single target, but yeah, again, AoE is where it goes crazy, because even if we only have 2 targets, that 800% Fire Frog damage is going up to 1600% Fire Frog damage. So now instead of doing double a normal frog, it's doing quadruple a normal frog. So yeah, this seems crazy. I guess it depends on if there are any hidden AoE caps on these Fire Toads, but I'm really excited for this. I think this will be crazy funnel damage. It'll be good for single target. I think it's just also really cool. Hopefully the Fire Toads are pretty cool to look at. It'd be fun if they were really big. But yeah, I think frog build, just based on this legendary, is what you're going to end up gravitating to in the end game. The next legendary is the Draconic Boots of the Devouring Flame. Because your Engulfing Flames do also increase all your damage for the target by 6% per active application. This, I think, has the potential to be really good. Again, the Engulfing Flames build as a whole is more about funnel damage, and it's more about single target damage. So I think it ends up being more situational, if your group needs more of that, or if specific dungeons need more of that. But, if you have Undying Flame, which gives you 2 charges of Engulfing Flame, if you have Rolling Flames, which gives you CDR on Engulfing Flames, and you roll up to a boss with Incinerate available, for the haste buff, you can double Engulfing Flames plus Pyromania at the start to get 3 Engulfing Flames up, and then you're just spamming stuff with a ton of haste, and you have a huge damage buff. You can maybe get 4 or 5 Engulfing Flames at a time if you're running slow burn as well. And yeah, I mean, Ardeos' single target could go really strong with this. Like, I think this will be Ardeos' strongest single target legendary. The problem is that I think the Fire Frog build with the previous legendary is just going to be better overall. Like, the Fire Frog legendary gives you a lot of damage in single target as well. It's not going to be as much as this one, but it gives you pretty good single target damage, and it also gives you a ton of AoE damage. So I just don't know if this, the Engulfing Flames legendary is going to keep up. But I am excited for the Engulfing Flames build. Like, I think it's exciting that they're adding a build for this specific purpose. So I'm excited to play around with it. And I'm also excited for the Fire Frog build if we end up going that way too. Like, I definitely will not be mad if we end up doing frogs again. This last one, Boomtastic Explosivo Choker. Causing your Fireball cast to reduce cooldown of Apocalypse by 8 seconds and increases the damage of Apocalypse by 150% based on their health. Higher health enemies take more damage. Obviously, that's good because you're usually using Apocalypse at the beginning of a pack. This is pretty similar to Ardeos' Season 1 Legendary, where it would reduce your Apocalypse cooldown per enemy hit down to like a minimum of 30 seconds. And it would also make them stun them as just extra utility. This is kind of similar. I think you get more cooldown reduction from this, like if you're going the Fireball build, because if you're going the Fireball build, you're taking Crash and Burn for the cooldown reduction. You are, just spamming out Fireballs. So this is nice to keep Engulfing Flames up, but again, like, this definitely seems like it's more tailored towards like the early to mid game rather than like eternal level gameplay, which I don't hate. Like, personally, I much prefer Fire Frogs over Fireball, so I don't mind like running a Fireball build in the early game, as long as I get to swap the Fire Frogs eventually. I think Fireball has some issues, mainly with single target, that kind of make it not so great in the end game, where single target becomes really important for the really tough bosses that you're going to face. And this legendary does nothing to help your single target. Like, yeah, you're getting more APOC damage and more APOC casts, but so maybe not nothing, but the other two definitely seem like they're going to be way better for single target. So this seems like it's going to be a leveling legendary kind of thing. Before you get your Frogs build online, before you hit those like haste and crit thresholds for Pyrophibian, this is going to be what you're kind of using. So overall, I'm really happy about a lot of these changes. Now, we did get some like big nerfs in the core mechanics and abilities section. We'll just have to see what Ardeos' power level is. But in terms of actual design, I think that these are really good. I think Engulfing Flames being able to stack is amazing. Like, that's the best change. And I'm really excited to test out some of these new talents, new and buff talents. And I'm excited to test out the Frog Legendary, especially. I think that'll be really fun. But we'll just have to see how strong he ends up with all of the kind of like aura nerfs at the start. But that's something that they can change. If Ardeos ends up being weak at the start of the season, they can just buff him. I think what's more important to me is that he's fun to play and that his design is good, and I think that these changes are definitely in the right direction. I really like having the 3 builds available. Before, it was really just Fireball and Frogs. Now we're adding in Engulfing Flames, and I think that's going to be an interesting twist. So those are all of the Ardeos changes for Season 2. I just wanted to go over my thoughts on all of those quick, because they decided they didn't want to drop the patch notes until, like 15 hours before the patch. So, yeah, they were kind of keeping us in suspense, but I think it was worth it. I'm pretty excited to play. So, I will see you guys in-game tomorrow, grinding out Ardeos gameplay, and see where that takes us. So, see you guys then.